The four learning styles I'll be talking about are part of the format system that was developed by Bernice McCarthy. If after this presentation you are interested in finding out more details about the format system, there is plenty of information online. Basically, McCarthy divided learners into four categories, and the divisions were made by looking at whether people learned best through doing versus watching, and you see that spectrum represented across the horizontal axis. And some students learn better by thinking about things versus sensing them emotionally, for example. And that spectrum is located across the vertical axis. And by graphing the ways people learn in this particular manner, the different types of learners are divided into the four quadrants that are created through these two axis points. So type 1 learners are learners who experience things through their senses, by feeling them, and also by watching them. Type 2 learners learn best through watching and thinking about things. Type 3 learners learn by thinking and doing. And type 4 learners learn by doing as well as sensing things through their emotional levels. Learners don't move from one learning style to another. It's simply the way people's brains are wired to process information the best. So, for example, if somebody is a type 3 learner, they will always be a type 3 learner, unless, for example, they had a traumatic brain injury that altered the way they processed information. So don't look at these as a hierarchy of different learning styles that somebody might move through, or don't look at them as one being better than the other. They're just different ways that people learn. People do learn through all four of these methods. Everybody does, but some people are predisposed to having stronger learning ability in one particular area. Type 1 learners are the ones who learn by sensing and feeling and through watching. Because of this, they are really good at imagining things. As an aid to that imagination, the primary question that they want to know the answer to is why. Why is the sky blue? Why did that happen? Why did you say that? Why is that person acting in a particular way? And all of those answers to the question why will help them imagine different scenarios. They want to experience something on a personal level. And so, why do I need to know this, for example, is a common question that you as a teacher might hear from a student in school, because they want those personal connections and they're important to them. Strengths of type 1 learners are the ability to brainstorm and understand people. And that relates both to them finding the importance of relating things to themselves on a personal level that enables them to understand others, and their imaginative abilities make them really good at brainstorming ideas, for example. However, that can also be seen as a weakness. Because they are so imaginative and can see so many possibilities, they have a really difficult time focusing in on just one particular answer. Because, for example, why isn't this just as good? Why doesn't this also work? Why can't we do this too? And so they are so focused on the big picture of all the possibilities, they have difficulty focusing on anything, on any one thing in particular. Type 2 learners learn by watching and thinking, and that makes them good at analyzing things. Traditional school is set up for a type 2 learner because students sitting in desks in rows perfectly match this learning style. They're watching what's happening in the front of the class. They're watching what's going on in their textbook even. They're thinking about the information, and they want to know the answer to the question, what? What is this about? What happened on this particular date? Their strengths are the ability to develop theories because they can think about things, they've seen things happen. They are good planners, they're analytical learners, and so that helps them put pieces of the puzzle together, for example. A problem with this type of learner is that they don't have enough practical application. They aren't doers, they're watchers. And so they are good at coming up with theories and ideas about the information, but they don't participate well when it comes to actually having some kind of active learning taking place. They're more passive learners. They want to think about it and they want to watch it. Type 3 learners are getting more into the doing part of the circle of the way these learners are graphed. They learn by thinking, like the type 2 learners, but they are doers, not watchers. The primary question they want to know the answer to is how. How does this work? How did that happen? A type 3 learner is the kind of person who will take something apart to find out how it works. They're good problem solvers, and they're good at making decisions because they do take the time to think about things. But because of their active learning style, sometimes they make decisions too quickly. They may work towards solving the wrong problem, for example. Type 4 learners are dynamic learners. They learn by doing and by experiencing things through their senses. They pretty much learn by trial and error. They want to know the answer to the question, if. If I do this, what will happen? Their strengths are getting things done. They're good leaders for this reason. They take action and they take risks. This can also be turned around into a weakness. Because they are so quick to take action, sometimes what they do isn't the best action to take. In this summary chart, you can kind of see how all of this, how all of these learning types relate to each other and things that they have in common. For example, if you took a look at a type 1 learner, for example, they do have some things in common with the type 4 learners and the type 2 learners because of that common access. Let me go through an example for you that might help you think about what this would mean for students in school. If you have, let's say, a high school science class. Maybe it's a chemistry class. And today is a lab day. And so as the students come into the classroom, there is a lab all set up. And let's say today's experiment is to mix two clear liquids together. And when you mix these two seemingly clear liquids, they turn blue and bubbly and just kind of overflow the beaker. The imaginative learner is really curious about this and wants to know, why did that happen? Why did these two chemicals change color? Because they're both clear liquids. The analytic learner wants to know what happened on a molecular level. Because they are a watcher and a thinker and not a doer, when the chemistry teacher demonstrates the experiment in front of the classroom, the type 2 learner doesn't care a thing about going to the lab tables and recreating this experiment. They watched it happen. That was enough for them. They're ready to think about it and write their lab report and just kind of get on with the report in that kind of a way. The common sense learner does want to know how that happened, but they are anxious to start the lab, and they want to get to those to the lab tables and see how this is going to work and really take a closer look at the experiment. A type 4 learner is the kind of student who comes into chemistry class, sees the tables all set up for an experiment, and immediately goes over to the tables to find out what will happen if they mix these two chemicals together. They don't care about watching the teacher do the experiment first or think about why these chemicals might react that way. They just want to see what happens. It's the type 4 learner who is the student most likely to blow up the chemistry lab. And you will have all of these types of learners in your classroom. And when you are creating lesson plans, you'll need to meet all of their needs. So the next part of this presentation will go back through each type of learner and give you information about how you can adapt your lessons so that you can best reach each of their teaching styles. Remember that everybody learns in all of these ways. However, some ways are better for individuals than others. Okay, your type 1 learners, they want to know the answer to the question why, remember. So in order to reach this type of student, you want to tell students why this information is important. You want to help the student make connections to their own lives and see the value in the information that you're doing. And as long as you can show students what the value is in the information you're teaching them to make it meaningful to them personally, you will be able to reach this type of learner. For type 2 learners, because they are learning by watching and thinking, you want to make sure that they're focused on the right information. Remember, they want to know the answer to the question, what? But you want to help them focus on which of those details are most important. So if you can give them the main ideas, for example, of a textbook, what information is the highest priority for them to learn, they won't be too bogged down by learning all of that factual information. They won't have a factual information overload happening in their brain. So try and focus your lesson on the pieces that are most important for optimal learning for your type 2s. For type 3 learners, remember that they want to know the answer to the question how. They're fine with thinking about the information that you're presenting to them, but they want to do some activities as well. So make sure you give them time to practice and apply the information that is new learning to them. And that practice time will help them make that information meaningful, and they'll get more out of it. Type 4 learners need to be able to move around and be out of their seats. So if there are things that need to be demonstrated or performed, these are the learners that will be best suited for those types of activities. So, when you put your units and your lesson plans together, think about things that you can do to teach that particular piece of information that will be good for each of these 4 learning styles. You probably can't fit all 4 learning styles into every lesson, but you should work toward incorporating at least 2 or 3. Even if a particular lesson only is a perfect match for one particular learning style, that's okay. Just make sure that from day to day you switch it up a little bit so you're not always only appealing to the analytic learner, or that you're not always only appealing to the dynamic learner. Try to mix it up a little bit. And because you can't meet all 4 learning styles in a particular lesson, that's why it says envision the next unit you will teach. Because by the time you get to the end of a particular unit of study, you should have an assignment in there that applies to each of the different learning styles, so that students who are better at dynamic learning have an opportunity to succeed, as well as those students who are good at just watching and thinking about the information. For example, if I were going to be teaching a unit on Romeo and Juliet, for example, I'll use that example since my background is English. If I were teaching Romeo and Juliet, I might give students a choice in what kind of project they did at the end of that unit. My imaginative learners might have an opportunity to create a scene for the play. For example, in Romeo and Juliet, it is never identified as to why these 2 families have been feuding for so many years. And so perhaps the imaginative learners would enjoy creating a scene that explains that family feud. An analytic learner might want to look at something in a deeper way. For example, take a more in-depth look at the people of the time period and why that particular culture might produce this kind of a situation. Or even just looking at a report about the play or a report about Shakespeare. They want to do more of the traditional school type work. And actually, to be honest with you, when I put this Romeo and Juliet project together at the end of this unit, I purposely did not have any choices that were set up for type 2 learners, because traditional school really focuses on catering to the type 2 learners' needs. And so all of the project choices I had were for types 1, 3, and 4 learners. My type 2 learners always came up to me and asked me if they could do a report about something instead. And I always said no, because I wanted them to be out of their comfort learning zone for a change. So that's just how this particular project worked. For the common sense learners, those that wanted to find out how things worked, I had some choices on there about building a model of Shakespeare's theater, for example. And so they would need to find out how the theater was set up, how the different aspects of the stage worked. For example, the trapdoors and the different rooms and things along that model building line. And so they would work on building that model. And then the dynamic learners, they are more interested in getting up and moving and acting things out, and they had the option of acting out a scene of the play. And so that was a way that I took that final project and met the needs of my learners. And that's also a way to differentiate instruction by giving students a choice of what they do. So think about something that you might teach and come up with some activities that meet each of those learning styles.